The thieves who plundered and robbed. Russia? They land in London, they buy a football club.
They're even defended by the Guardian.
Soon the Mubarak there will be the Mubarak Manchester United or Leeds United will belong to Mubarak.
Or by Harrods.
Or by Harrods again, that's also another option of course. So the gentleman wonders why capitalism? Because the fact of the matter is, capitalism in America and Europe succeeded in maintaining its power and its democracy because it simultaneously utilized its military and economic force in order to expand its control over the world. When Britain...
What happened the first 150 years of our country when we didn't have that massive military forces? We weren't multinational.
Then there was no democracy, my friend.
Listen, there's always been injustice.
When did the black bar stop in America? When did the colour bar stop? Sorry?
The civil rights movement.
So you asked me 150 years?
No, what I'm saying
the colour bar ended in the 1960s.
You're right. Human progress has taken a while and it sucks.
So I'm pointing out the pieces of human progress that you are ignoring.
So what's the answer? Socialism?
I explained to you a second ago.
Revolution!
Sorry?
Russia, first class carriage, communist, go!
What I am saying is the overthrow of capitalism. By that I mean the following. Public ownership of the banks. God knows these people use the banks to plunder their people. Public ownership and democratic control by the people of the Middle East themselves over their resources. Not by British Petroleum or Shell Oil or international multinational corporations plundering the resources and paying princes and playboys of the Middle East to live the life of luxury in five-star hotels. I bet you go to the Grosvenor Hotel and the Hilton Hotel, ask them about the booking for the next few weeks, and they're full of rulers of Egypt and Tunisia. The crisis that developed in the Middle East is merely the breaking point, the spark that lights the prairie fire that is the worldwide revolt of the people who are suffering under the system of capitalism. And the gentleman here says, well, what's the alternative? You're going to have a dictatorship. That's what happened in the Soviet Union. That's what happened in China, in Cuba, and so on. We can clearly see the outlines of the processes developing in the Middle East and how they're connecting with movements elsewhere. When you look at Latin America, another region of the world, not far from the United States, dominated by the United States for decades, for centuries in fact, held in penury for centuries, such that the major cities were just slumlands, and the lands of the whole of Latin America, some of the most fertile and rich lands of the entire planet, were plundered for the United States, for the wealthy of the United States. Same with Cuba, used as a casino and a whorehouse for the rulers of America and the Latin American world. And so what you've seen in Latin America is the beginning of a revolt across the whole continent. The people have stood up and said, we want real democracy, not a sham, farcical democracy of dictators controlling the mass media, all the money, and electing themselves and banning anyone who disagrees with them, or imprisoning or torturing those who disagree with them, or murdering them, like in Argentina, in Colombia today, that great homeland of democracy according to the United States. More people are murdered in Colombia than in Iraq. The democracies that are genuine democracies in Latin America are like those in Venezuela, in Bolivia, now in Ecuador, in Uruguay, in Nicaragua. The people have stood up and say they want constituent power. What does it mean? It means they create a new political system in which all power, political and economic, is in the hands of the people at the ballot box, whereby they say the gas of the country, the oil of the country, the land of the country, the resources of the country belong to the people by the constitutional right. This is what is necessary in the Middle East. That's why automatically, I mentioned this to some people, I wrote an article published on the internet. I said before the regime fell in Tunisia, what do they require? A constituent assembly with the power to seize property of the elite, to create a new regime democratically by the people, and to institute laws to defend the rights of the overwhelming majority of people of the country. And this is what genuine democratic control means. And let's be clear, as soon as they create a constituent assembly in Tunisia and in Egypt, this regime in Egypt and in Tunisia will be more democratic than the regimes in Britain, France or America. More democratic. So all this talk, remember George W. Bush, I will bring democracy to the world. All this talk, I will bring democracy to the Middle East. All he's done is maintain one dictatorship after another, plundering and thieving from the people. What we are witnessing is nothing less than a similar process to what happened in 1989, but in reverse in a way. In 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell, one country after another had a revolutionary uprising. One regime after another fell from one day to the next. What they used to call in Reagan's time the domino effect. They feared it would happen, of course, in Latin America. And now what we are seeing in the Middle Eastern countries, starting with Tunisia, one guy sets himself on fire. There's even a joke now in the Middle East going around, something like want a revolution, send us burn a Tunisian. So the fact of the matter, and there are many people who've set themselves on fire in Riyadh, in Morocco, in Egypt, right across the region, in order to spark the revolutionary revolt. But that revolt has one common socio-economic cause. That is, the system of capitalism has maintained people in penury, in areas of the world which are naturally wealthy. After all, the Nile is the homeland of modern civilization, for God's sake. The Nile Valley is a wealthy, fertile land, able to feed millions and millions of people outside the borders of Egypt. And yet, these people live in poverty. The people live in slums. Cairo is a dump. A dump. Even though these are the people who created the most beautiful monuments that every single museum in the world wants to collect. And so, after thousands of years, for these people still to be treated like slaves by pharaohs, the idea that this is going to go the way of Iran, I think is wrong. I saw in some newspapers, they're saying, oh, well in Iran it started as a social movement, but it immediately went to Islam. This was the net result a few months later. The reality is, the movement is based upon young people. Look on Friday, when prayers were called, you look on the Al Jazeera, and you could see the demonstrators. When prayers were called, the fact of the matter is, regardless of your religious affiliation, only a minority of the demonstrators were doing their prayers. Most of them continued demonstrating. And so what we're witnessing is a social movement of the masses, born out of the new demographics of young people, educated, networked, communicate, similar to young people in Europe or America. Similar, but with conditions, ruled over by brutal dictators, no real prospects of employment, no prospects of the right to emigrate, to get a decent life. Therefore, they must bring about change in their own country. This is a great step forward in the revolutionary development of humanity, because we are witnessing a people who have been so oppressed. And we were told these Muslim people, their culture, their religion, will never allow them to make anything progressive for mankind. That's what we were being given. You know, all they'll do is come with suicide bombs. When in Egypt, one person is killed, others come forward and say, shoot me! Shoot me! How else can you explain why people, unarmed civilians, maximum with a stone and a stick, confront tanks and machine guns and take them on day in, day out? Now they're on top of the tanks. Within a few days, Mubarak will fall. That's my prediction, will fall. He will fall because the lower ranks of the officers will join with the masses, and then the leadership of the army will be compelled. Either we overthrow Mubarak and kill him, arrest him, or send him on an aeroplane to Saudi Arabia. I don't think he'll be allowed in London. His son is here with the money, but he will go to Saudi Arabia. And then maybe one day in Saudi Arabia soon, there'll be a big burning of the lot of them. And what we are witnessing, I think, the Moroccans, the Algerians, and yes, even the Saudi Arabia. And of course, this challenges and changes the balance of power in relation to Israel, don't forget. What we're witnessing is a fundamental transformation in the world balance of power. This pattern of control, this patchwork control that the Americans established after the British and French were expelled from the Middle East. This pattern of control with Israel at the centre. Oil from Saudi Arabia backing up American dollar. Dictatorships backing up the United States of America. So who's saying that you want? One country after another. This pattern of interest will be overthrown in Egypt in the next days. Which means, of course, I mean, after all, look at Israel. They're very clever people, the Jewish people. They are very clever people.
Like everyone else.
Look how wealthy Israel is. How wealthy Israel is. And yet 2 million people, Palestinians, live in dire poverty. How can this explain? It's not even the population of East London. It is a vindictive policy of brutality against the Palestinian people. And only revolutionary change can bring about transformation in this condition. And I believe you will discover, not only are the Palestinian people emboldened by the struggle in Egypt, but also the people of Israel, the Jewish people of Israel itself, will realize they also have a commonality of interest with the majority of ordinary people in the Middle East. And so as constituent power emerges from the will of the masses to take control of their own destiny, so you will see a transformation in the whole power balance on a world scale. And the United States, the fact of the matter is a waning international power. Of course, let's not make any mistake about it. The Chinese will step in. The Chinese will step in. Of course, the Suez Canal is useful for them. Of course, they're already developing Africa with economic programs, schools, hospitals,
Sudan,
roads, railways. And so they will inevitably step in Egypt and provide resources to raise these countries, and the cities of these countries can be developed citadels with good living standards, with high education, with dignity for the people, and jobs for all, houses for all, education for all, healthcare for all. These are the tasks of the modern era. Each step forward in human scientific development should enable us to share the knowledge of mankind, share the technical and scientific resources of mankind, and develop a world of peace, freedom and plenty in harmony with the ecology. That is the pathway of transformation that has been opened by the revolution in Tunisia, which led to the explosion of revolt in Egypt and will follow with revolutions across the Middle East. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be up again a bit later.